Good morning. Thank you
Morning.
for com- Thank you for coming, everyone. Uh, we have with us Jane Doe, number 1, number 2, and number 3, and all of them will be providing a statement shortly after my statement. Last year, Nathaniel Radimak was accused of numerous crimes: assault, criminal threats, vandalism, and elder abuse. And he entered a plea. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Recently, some of the victims were notified that he would be released today, August 28th, 2024. Reportedly, he has been given credit for 424 days served while he was awaiting sentencing and 212 days for good behavior. His early release has shocked and disappointed many of the victims whom I represent. It is also unsettling to them that the notice that they received about his release came from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, and on the form which was sent to them under inmate proposed community of release, it states, quote, unknown, end quote. As a result, many of the victims are terrified that Mr. Radimak will retaliate against them. This situation is another example of why we need truth in sentencing laws and why the District Attorney of Los Angeles County needs to do a much better job of communication with victims as to what a sentence really means. Also, many of these victims were never consulted about the plea deal and were never given a chance to speak at the sentencing, as was their right under Marsy's law. Finally, we do have a message for Mr. Radimak. Even though you are released on parole, a condition of parole is that you must obey all laws. If you violate any law and threaten any person or damage their property, or both, your parole may be revoked, and you may then be sentenced to time in prison for the remainder of your original sentence. If you have not learned your lesson from the time that you have spent in custody, another judge will teach you the lesson you should have learned from the time that you have spent there. All potential violations of the law involving my clients will be reported, and you will be held accountable. Consider yourself warned. We will not be intimidated by you, and we will not be deterred from seeking justice. And now, statement by Jane Doe 1.
Thank you, Attorney Allred. I want to say that I really appreciate your lifelong advocacy and support on behalf of victims everywhere. Your courage and your commitment is an inspiration to me and so many others. Thank you to the media who has joined us today. Let me start by saying that it was very shocking to hear that Nathaniel Radimak, also known as the Tesla road rage driver, was being released this week after serving a brief 10 months of his 5-year sentence. Nathaniel Radimak repeatedly made deliberate, intentional choices to attack victims citywide on multiple occasions. Almost all the victims were women, and some were senior citizens. This was not just one isolated incident, which begs the question: is there hope to rehabilitate repeat offenders? I'd like to believe that there is hope and that people are worthy of a second chance. I pray that Nathaniel Radimak's brief time behind bars taught him a lesson. However, I must add that lenient sentencing and closing jails and early parole releases and parole boards continue to allow perpetrators to walk free after serving just minimal time, putting a lot of innocent people at risk and sending criminals the wrong message. People should be outraged by the lack of protection and rights of victims. Prop 47 was mislabeled as the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act, but I don't know of anyone who would agree that those propositions improved our public safety and made our neighborhoods and communities safer. The Los Angeles District Attorney, Mr. Gascon, let many of the victims of Nathaniel Radimak down. He plays an essential role in prosecuting crimes and ensuring offenders are held accountable for their actions, but this did not happen. Our constitutional rights were violated and were not followed by the district attorney's office. He did not properly represent our rights. So in November, I'm asking people, hold the district attorney accountable for his failure to protect all victims just like us. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm here today to share with you my deep frustration and loss of faith in our justice system. Nathaniel Radimak has caused harm to multiple individuals over a span of 2 decades, and he's now set to be released from prison today after serving less than a year. I'm unable to believe such a short sentence would result in any sort of behavioral reform or rehabilitation, considering the length of time he's been committing crimes. It makes me angry and disappointed to see that this person who has caused suffering and trauma walk free, while his victims are still left to deal with the aftermath of his actions. We're still fighting for compensation for our damages, but there are constant delays in that process. It's time for our justice system to prioritize the rights and well-being of those affected by crimes. To the people in positions who have the power to make change, I ask you to please take an honest look at the flaws in our system and make the necessary changes to ensure that justice is truly served for all victims, regardless of race, gender, social status. We deserve a system that protects and supports victims, not one that allows perpetrators to commit crimes with such little consequence.
Thank you. And Jane Doe, number 3.
Hello, everybody. I am a victim of Nathaniel Radimak. I'm very disappointed in the overall outcome of this case leading up to his release. The communication with the DA's office has been poor throughout this process. His sentence was cut short, and he is being released way faster than I thought would happen given his 5-year sentence. I would feel huge relief knowing I had security to back me up. I highly doubt Radimak has learned from his mistakes and will be coming out a changed person after a short time. I am worried he will try to find the victims whose names have been released. He is a menace to society, and I strongly disagree about his early release. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I know that there are some questions, so we'll take questions. Just place your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. Well, actually, place them in the Q&A. Thank you. Right now, there are no open questions. We'll wait a couple minutes and see if there are any. Oh. Okay, Jeff has a question. And the question is, was the notice for release sent to all of the victims or just one? I don't know the answer to that question.
I was
I
not
do,
informed.
yeah, and I do know that I have a copy of one that was sent, and that's why I referred to it. Are there any other questions? The next question is, can I explain further how he's able to get out in only 10 months' time? I think that's a question that is probably better answered by the district attorney's office. Again, it appears that he's on parole. They say he will be supervised on probation, on parole, and that he will have to register. It's strange that he'll have to register, but at least as to the notification that was sent to one of these three clients, it says that the community to which he is being released is unknown. So my question is, how can they supervise his parole if they don't know where he's going to be? And that's a rhetorical question. I suppose that if he doesn't register, then they will have to find him. But of course, it would have been my hope that they would have been able to say, for example, he will not be released into Los Angeles County. But at the time this notice was sent, they didn't know or didn't state where he would be released. So thank you for the question. I will just add one thing to the question. He does get credit for time that he spent in custody prior to having entered his plea, prior to being sentenced, so that's part of it. He also gets credit for good time that he spent in custody. That's the best that I could do at this point. The district attorney's office would need to elaborate on that if they wish to do so. The next question from Paige is to verify he was granted parole by a parole board, and we don't know what county he has been paroled to. He was granted parole. I don't know if it was by a parole board. And correct, we don't know what county he has been paroled to. Ruth has another question. Do I happen to have any other information on this man? What was his motive? His victims appear to be all women. Does he have an issue against women? I don't know his motive. Good question. Because motive actually is not necessary to prove in a criminal case. It's always helpful to know, and juries like to know the motive. But this did not go to a jury trial because he entered a plea, and a plea is in lieu of, instead of, an actual trial taking place. In reference to your question, his victims appeared to be all women. Does he have an issue against women? I don't know. it would be sheer speculation on my part to say that, and perhaps he thinks women might be more vulnerable. I don't know. But the old cliche, never underestimate a woman, is something that I think any predator, any wrongdoer should think of before they do. What is his official release date? The release was scheduled to take place today. It also says that it could be within a day or two of the scheduled release date. But a victim should have been notified of the new date if, in fact, there was a different date than the scheduled release date today. To the best of my knowledge, nobody on this call has been notified of a different date. Are there any more questions? So I would say that if you do have a question about his actual release date, which is a fair question, it probably is best to contact the Department of Corrections, Sierra Conservation Center in Jamestown, California. Or you could contact the Regional Parole Office, or whatever number you have for press for the Department of Corrections or the Parole Office. There are more questions. Ruth asked, does he have a driver's license? Therefore, is he allowed to drive? I don't know the answer to that. Another good question. Hal Eisner asks, how will these victims' lives be affected going forward? Another great question. Jane Doe 1, 2, or 3? Would any of you like to respond to it? It's all up to you.
I'll just say that emotionally, driving, you feel different, that you take different precautions that you wouldn't have before. You have a different perspective when you see Teslas, for sure. There is some reservations that you feel about now this perpetrator being released early, things like that. And those things don't go away very easily. It is definitely something that stays with you and lingers long after that incident took place, at least for me.
I know for me, there was a very long time between my incident and when he was actually caught. And the feeling of unrest and the feeling of being so unsettled, knowing that he was still out there, it caused a lot of issues for me. And it is not a settling feeling to know that he's going to be back out there again. So, to know how it's going to change my life in the future, I don't know. I hope that, I'm hoping for the best, that there was some change within him and he's going to be a changed individual. But of course, I have my doubts. And so I guess we will just have to see and take it day by day.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, well, thank you for coming, everybody. Some people have requested a live interview. I will consult with all three and see if anyone wants to do that today or is available to do that. And I will respond and let you know. Also, copies of the statements of Jane Doe 1, 2, and 3 will be available if you simply ask. Email me and we'll send it to you, and also my statement. I apologize, I have a little cold here, but we wanted to get this done. And we thank all of you for coming. If you have recorded this, that's fine, you're welcome to use it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.